There is an event coming up quite shortly, an event that is celebrating a kind of pilgrimage around certain holy sites. It happens on Friday and Saturday, and an advert is out advertising the fact. And then it brought to my mind, well, what is the use of pilgrimages? It's one common factor for every single religious system that has its roots in antiquity, or maybe even not so much antiquity. For example, Islam is the latest of the Abrahamic religions, and Sikhism is the latest of the Indian Oriental religions, and Baha'ism is the latest of the religions associated with Abrahamic religions also. And the one common factor we see is this propensity for pilgrimage. Why is that? Is a question we should ask. And of course, there are various answers to it. Now, we happen to be at the beginning, I think, of summer, or at least in the middle of summer. Anyway, we're involved in it. How do we know it's summer? I ask people that, and they think in various ways. It's a difficult question in Ireland, because to figure out when summer is, it might have been a week ago. So we know that it's summer because of Wimbledon. Everybody knows it's summer when people observe, oh, Wimbledon is on. And for many people, it reminds them of summer. And so people are prepared to go for an event from faraway places. There are people who have to go into a kind of lottery to be on the center court or witness that. And so people like to go away anyway for various reasons. One reason why people want to go away is to get away from the familiar realm that could create anxiety for us. That is the reason why people like to go on holidays. It was maybe not more than a century or so ago where holidays were unknown. And as travel has increased in popularity and convenience, people then decide holidays should be a time where we get away from our environment and go somewhere. Because there's a kind of pleasure relief, psychological pleasure relief in relocating. And that has a great benefit because we don't have to worry about things. There's one particular person, a devotee, some years ago, I said, when you go on holiday, you should leave your mobile phone at home. It was a shocking idea to him. What if? Anyway, he tried it out and had the most wonderful, relaxing holiday. Why? Because he was living in the present moment. All our anxiety goes away when we live in the present moment and enjoy our surroundings. So holidays are like that, but pilgrimages are very different. Pilgrimages also allow us to go away. They also allow us to get some clarity and relief of the mind. And there are different reasons why people go on holiday, or at least go on pilgrimages, going back from ancient times. Massive pilgrimage is the Hajj from Islam. It is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Is at least once in your life, you should try to go on pilgrimage. And the key to it is very telling about pilgrimages themselves. As you go to a communal place, social environment, you're all dressed for the same. There is no distinction in this Hajj between rich, poor, you're all on a level playing field. A great fraternal aspect to it is there. And so the Hajj, you see film of it, masses and masses of people, something like a wheel going round the Kaaba. And you can almost tangibly feel the fervor of the ritualism of it, of the fact that it is a holy place. And what makes it a holy place? What makes it a holy place is holy people visiting, not just once or twice, but for generations and centuries. There are people who visit Rome. Roman Catholics visit it. There are people who visit Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a pilgrimage place for three, at least three Abrahamic religions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And then in India itself, of course, there are the four famous holy places that are on the pilgrimage route, and countless numbers of holy places along the Ganga River itself, which has for thousands of years been deemed to be a place of pilgrimage. So there are the four holy places: Kedar, Badri, Puri, Dwaraka, Rameshwaram, just to mention a few. And because of the vastness of the country and the antiquity of the history of its spirituality, we'll see that there are pilgrimage places everywhere, and people go on pilgrimage. Also, arranging it around events such as Kumbh Mela. There are even pilgrims who have come from Ireland along to Kumbh Mela, where millions, literally millions of people are going. So why should we go on pilgrimage? Each person has to answer for themselves. In the Middle Ages, Canterbury in England was a primary place for pilgrimage. In more contemporary times, Knock in Ireland is a place for pilgrimages. What stimulated people to go to that place? Just as an example, it's a place of Marian apparitions. That makes Lourdes also in Portugal, or at least France, I should say, a place of pilgrimage. Fatima in Portugal, a place of pilgrimage. And so there are many, many places associated with sacred events. People go on pilgrimage to experience that for a number of different reasons. Firstly, any holiday is good physically, mentally, any event, any place that takes you away. But pilgrimages are not always places of luxury. In fact, what makes it a pilgrimage is the level of difficulty. It's not a holiday, actually, in any conventional sense, and yet people feel in some way uplifted. There are some people who go for requests, let us say, a cure for a disease, a better condition. There's the story, the princess and the frog is saying to the princess, if you give me a kiss, then I'll transform into a very handsome prince, expecting that that's what the princess would want. But of course, a variation of the story says that the princess replies, no, I'd much rather have a talking frog. And so the whole anticipation of an expectation of a result is gone. The highest way of approaching a pilgrimage is to have no expectations. That is true of all spiritual life. It's true of meditation. It's true of prayer. It's true of japa. It's true of ritualism. But at the same time, there is a basic starting point where expectation is there. At the highest point, no expectation. The beginning point has some expectation. Maybe there'll be a cure at Lourdes. Maybe somebody's a cripple and they think medical treatment hasn't worked, will not work, so go to Lourdes, drink the water there, get some kind of cure. And there are records, verified medically, that miracles have taken place. And there are other people who will go to these pilgrimage places in order to get some clarity of vision. And there are others who do it as a point of worship, a point of offering. There are others who do it for supremely devotional purposes, replicating hardships of saints, and even in Christianity, for example, replicating the suffering of Christ. The hardships of the martyrs and the desert fathers and so on replicated is evidenced here in Ireland, where even in remote places, there are beehive huts constructed with great difficulty in remote places, battered by the Atlantic Ocean, where food is scarce and the hardship is evident. And we call this generally tapasya or asceticism. Now, we can see that wise people don't go for extreme asceticism. It's criticized in the Bhagavad Gita itself. This is a tamasic version of worship. But there are others who feel that it is a replication of an inner journey expressed in an outer world. The whole of life itself can be viewed as a pilgrimage. So, physically, there seems to be an advantage to a pilgrimage, maybe satisfying a need for a break, but also to prepare ourselves in terms of clarity of mind, a sense of peace, maybe psychological and physical benefit. Maybe it's for a diversion point of view, but the spiritual value is in employing the physical and psychological, and also away from diffusions, also to prepare to go through the necessary disciplines and controls, self-controls. In Buddhism, in Bodh Gaya, for example, there are monks and other Buddhist pilgrims who prostrate on a pilgrimage journey every so often, every few meters, full prostration, and they travel like that for kilometers and kilometers on end. Why would they do that? It is not for worship necessarily, since technically that is absent in Buddhism, but they do it in order for controlling the thing which is the most difficult. Lust and greed belong to the body, doubt belongs to the mind, doubt and fear belong to the mind, and both of these are interactive. And so when people traveled in, let's say, in medieval days to places like Canterbury, why would Canterbury be a place of pilgrimage? Because it is a place of the most horrendous martyr, Thomas Becket. Thomas Becket, almost on the implied orders of King Henry, and 4 knights came and they murdered the troublesome priest. And they not only murdered him, but murdered him in the sacred place itself, making a sacrilege of the place, and in the midst of a holy ritualistic event going on. And then, of course, miracles are reported. And wherever there are miracles, wherever there is any sign or any kind of flavor of something supernaturally spiritual, it becomes a holy place of pilgrimage. Like that, we see, even in ladies as well, even in our ashram here, there's a window in our monastic section, which is made to look like a window, what do you call it, stained glass window. And there we find the representation of Ladies' Well. What is Ladies' Well? It is a holy well from antiquity, Christianized, because Christianity retained all the previous Celtic customs, and the Celtic customs retained many customs from previous generations of non-Celtic people. And they had the idea that all springs, all holy wells, all trees were sacred and holy. Everything in nature is sacred and holy, and nature itself provides a suitable background for pilgrimages as well, you must have noticed, because it reminds us of beauty, of all the values that we don't get in a troubled mind or a troubled world. Instantaneously, we can tune our attention in to the highest and noblest of thoughts and sentiments by putting ourselves in the most glorious scenes of nature, and people understand that and spend a fortune going to such places on holiday. But you see, you can go to these places and not take advantage fully of the aesthetic value of what is there. That aesthetic value, I should say, the beauty of all beauties. They may catch a glimpse of it. I'm told there are holiday destinations with absolutely beautiful azure seas. You can look out on the horizon that seems to go on infinitely. And the sun rises beautifully there and reflects itself over the waves. And no doubt people go in the early morning for walks and look out on the ocean until, let's say, 10 o'clock, when there are water sports going back and forth, disturbing the peace of everything. And so the true aesthetic value has been lost. And we've now replaced it with enjoyment. Enjoyment which won't last long. How many times will you go up and down on a water vessel at high speed? So what is a pilgrimage? I have just said that every religion has this, from Rome to Jerusalem to Mecca to the Ganga. And why should it be there in the Mount Kailash, purportedly the dwelling place of Lord Shiva? Why should we go through such severe hardships on pilgrimages? And I don't think it is a pilgrimage if there's no hardship. Let us take, for example, the Camino. There are people, I should say, who go on pilgrimages on such a regular basis. And don't tell me it's easy. Soon you'll get blisters on your feet. And there are rest houses, no doubt, but people still go on. And they go on for a number of different reasons. Some go for physical fitness. Some go for the scenery of it. Some go for the experience of it. But others, of course, go for the sacredness of it, the fact that it is a journey where you have the opportunity to pray, to be in touch with the source of all beauty, the source of life itself, and to contemplate. All you have to do is put one foot in front of the other. And that's the nature of many, many pilgrimages, most pilgrimages. Now, of course, we can easily see the potential corruption of pilgrimages if you read the Canterbury Tales by Chaucer. But a pilgrimage is a mental process as it is a physical process. And when these two are conjoined, there's every value in it. But we also have to understand that life itself is a pilgrimage. And there are many, many people who will tell you, no matter where you go, wise people of all traditions, Rumi, for example, will tell you, wherever you go as a seeker to look for God, if that's the purpose of your pilgrimage, you've missed the point. The point is that the divine is and can be found right here, right now. And after some time, you may realize, I don't have to go here or there. Now today we are celebrating actually the Tita Puja, that is the birth anniversary of one of Ramakrishna's disciples, monastic disciples, Swami Purnananda. When Ramakrishna passed away and when a monastery was established in Baranagar, then after some time, the tendency of sadhus, monks, traditionally is to wander. And so they go off in different directions. The one person who never did it was this particular Swami. He remained in residence, tending what he viewed as the living presence of Ramakrishna, not only on the outside, but also on the inside. Where will we go after all if the author of the whole universe is sitting right here where we stand? You won't necessarily find it in a church. In fact, it was Wesley, the founder of Methodism, who really felt you cannot find this divine in the churches. And so he took his missionary message out to the fields and the industrial complexes. And during the Industrial Revolution, many people who didn't go into the select area of church pews. And it is because of this Wesleyan attitude that we have a Sister Nivedita, for example, whose family was following this Methodism, John Wesley's popular ideals of community upliftment and a kind of awareness of social needs in the spiritual realm. Going back to the original message and life of Jesus, who was concerned with the poor. Buddha was concerned with the spiritually impoverished. Jesus was concerned with the physically and spiritually impoverished people as well. And Ramakrishna was taken on a pilgrimage also. The great 19th century mystic, as we sometimes say, went on a pilgrimage. It was about 4 years before Ramakrishna's various experiences and so on and so forth. In fact, it was in 1868, and Ramakrishna's benefactor, Mathu Baba, took Ramakrishna on a pilgrimage, not specifically for him, other people were there. And so he earnestly requested the master, Ramakrishna, to go on the pilgrimage and be one of the party. And they started out on 27th January, and they halted for a few days in places like Deogar to visit the shrine at Vijayanath and so on. And here there was a very interesting thing that happened. Now, one day while passing through a neighboring village, Sri Ramakrishna was greatly distressed to see the wretched condition of its people. Moved with sympathy for them, he said to Mathu, "You are the steward of the mother. Feed these poor people and give everyone a piece of cloth." Anyway, Mathu hesitated. Mathu was quite rich, saying, "Well, this pilgrimage will cost a lot of money. And these people are very numerous. So we may be short of funds on the journey. If we try to feed and clothe them, we'll run short. We won't be able to continue the pilgrimage." And so, what was the reaction? "Well, so what do you say to this? We may be short of funds on this journey if we try to feed and clothe them. So what do you say to this, Father? This pilgrimage that costs money, what value is it," he was thinking, "if we don't have a spiritual attitude toward what is exactly in front of us? That we have an opportunity to take this money and give it to them. That would be the whole spiritual background to the pilgrimage. Because if you go on a pilgrimage without any profound spiritual dimension in your mind, what value is it?" Anyway, Sri Ramakrishna was inexorable. He shed tears at the sight of such abject misery, and he said in anguish, "Look, fire upon you. I'm not going to Varanasi, one of the most sacred places in the whole of India, and certainly one of the most ancient cities, Kashi, still inhabited in the world. He says, I prefer to remain with these helpless people." And so, like a petulant child, he left Madhu's company and sat with the poor villagers. And of course, at the sight of his compassion, Madhu was also moved. And he ordered bales of cloth from the Calcutta to distribute among them, and fed them also very well. And then Ramakrishna was satisfied, and cheerfully he started then for Varanasi. He would have foregone the whole pilgrimage to Varanasi on the basis of these impoverished people. So, what is the purpose of the pilgrimage if we cannot at least have these fundamental spiritual qualities of serving the poor and the distressed? And that really set the tone for the whole of the philanthropic work done in succession. Then, of course, when the Ramakrishna passed away, Sharda Devi, his consort, his wife, was inconsolable. And so those around thought she also should go on a pilgrimage. So it was about a week, I would think, after the mother's passing. And her restlessness and sorrow increased, of course, to such an extent that, in fact, it was fully decided to send her on a pilgrimage, and this time to Vrindavan, another sacred place associated with the life of Krishna. And after spending just a week at Balu's house, she started off on this pilgrimage for the sacred place, accompanied by Yogin, that is Swami Yogananda, Kali, Latu, all became monks and so on, and a few women devotees. And on the way, they visited Vaidyanath, Varanasi, Ayodhya, and so on and so forth, various other places. And not only that, but on her various excursions, she had visions on the way. Even when she later in life went to Puri, to Jagannath, she had a vision, a profound vision there, continuous visions. We sometimes think that the Holy Mother was an exemplar of a normal person, who didn't have all these samadhis, visions and ecstasies and moods and so on that Ramakrishna had. Yet she had these profound experiences, profound visions. And others had visions of her also. So there is a whole book called The Way of the Pilgrim. And I've mentioned this many times before. The Way of the Pilgrim is about a Russian Orthodox pilgrim who hears a message about the exhortation of living life in such a prayerful manner that we never ever forget the divine. In other words, pray without ceasing, completely, ceaselessly. And he wonders, how is it possible? And so he goes on a pilgrimage to discover, to find this out, which makes it another purpose then for a pilgrimage. To find, I mentioned clarity, to find an answer. Because with every step, every place of visitation, every person who he seeks the answer from creates a further opening for him. And he comes across the key to this praying without ceasing, and it happens to be japa. It happens to be the not only recitation, but the profound connection and meaning of the Jesus prayer in the Orthodox Church. Jesus, Son of Mary, have mercy on me. Simple prayer, but it has a profound meaning. Sometimes when we pray in this way, we have no idea what we're doing. A mantra is a most profound connecting, protecting thought. It is a thought. It's not a meaningless thing. And very often, when we're given prayers or mantras or something like that we have to repeat, supposedly, then somehow they lose their meaning. There was one particular devotee in Ireland who went on this yatra, this pilgrimage around Kailash. It's a common pilgrimage. It's not easy to get there. These days, the best way, you have to go to China, and you go in through there, and you spend, in his view, the coldest period of time he's ever experienced his entire life. And going through these hardships. Before he went, he said, what is the spiritual discipline? It's a pilgrimage. What should I be doing? It's clearly not a holiday camp. It's clearly hard going. It's tough. What should I do? And I told him, japa. With every step you repeat your mantra, japa. Any difficulty that you have, I don't know, let us say, unpleasant noise to your own ears, you replace it with a sweeter sound of the Lord's name called japa. And so he did that, and following instructions. And up to then, he recalls he hadn't made, in his phraseology, I hadn't made friends with my mantra, he said. What does that mean? It means he didn't really see the profound connection. He was just repeating something. And we know that the mantra reveals itself through repetition. Because the mind is not fully engaged, and the mantra attempts to fully engage the mind, the attention. And so he reveals some profound things. Firstly, he said, I made friends with my mantra. Eventually, I realized I could not take a further step without the repetition of this mantra. And this mantra did several things. It comforted him. It buffered him against the physical difficulties of the tough pilgrimage. It gave him a whole new insight to the extent that he had happened to be studying the Mahabharata, and he came to that section where we find Yudhishthira and the dog and so on. And he saw this dog, or it was actually a wolf probably, following him on this pilgrimage, and seemingly a connection was there. And simultaneously, there was an experience from another person, I won't mention the name, who also said, I don't have the opportunity to go on this pilgrimage, so you go for me. And he felt that it was that person following. Many unusual experiences like that. So there are most profound experiences of pilgrimage. If we study even Swami Vivekananda's pilgrimages, both inside Europe, by the way, and in India, we will see the most profound experiences where exhaustion is overcome and revelations are overcome. If it hadn't been for the various pilgrimage of going the length and breadth of India, Swami Vivekananda would not really have realized probably his full mission in life, which was very specific, very distinct, very pinpoint. So all of these things come from pilgrimage. Now, we happen to have some understandings from his Guru Bhais on the question of pilgrimage. And so Swami Brahmananda would have this to say. Swami Brahmananda, the spiritual child, if you will, of Ramakrishna, he says, if you think that you can become a Mahatma or a great seer by wandering here and there, let me tell you, you are mistaken. You cannot become a saint that way. Without unceasing practice, you cannot have any religious experience. It cannot be had by trickery. Now, in the case of the way of the pilgrim, the Orthodox pilgrim, he is not merely wandering. He is on a direct course. He wants to find the answer to his questions. And so he's directed from this place to the next place to the next place on his quest. But if you think that if you go to Rishikesh or some other sacred place in order to get enlightenment, you will be severely mistaken. You won't get it. Because what is the truth? It is that which sits inside you. And we see that lesson from Swami Ramakrishnananda himself. He says again, it is wise to go occasionally to places of pilgrimage. He's saying stop wandering, but go on places of pilgrimage and live there for some time. We can see how when Ramakrishna went to Varanasi, he stayed there for some time. I visited, fortunately, the place where he used to stay. It's maintained. And you go there, a very small room with a cot where he slept and the place where he meditated and did some spiritual practice. And he also went, of course, to see the holy people of the time. Bhavari Baba was there, for example. So it is wise occasionally to go on pilgrimage from time to time. The holy atmosphere, he says, and change of scenery are aids to what? Health of the body and the mind. That's exactly the reason why people go on a summer camp or a holiday. These places are also conducive to meditation. Now, what's the difference? Well, if we go on a holiday, we also get, wouldn't it, health of body and mind? No. You may get a little bit of health, but of mind, not really, not necessarily, not in this same way, not in this complete way. He says at each place of pilgrimage, there's a special time when the spiritual current flows, because there's an atmosphere generated by this pilgrimage. If at those times an aspirant meditates, his mind easily becomes absorbed and he finds increased joy in his meditation. I can verify that at Vishwanath Temple, there in Varanasi itself. But also, you see, there's a famous temple that I have visited. By the way, I've been on a number of different pilgrimages myself over my whole life. Some which were pleasant and some which were not. At some pilgrimage sites, you get pushing, shoving, squeezing, and completely no consideration for fellow pilgrims. You know, when pilgrims went to Canterbury, they had whole hostels built. It's where we get the name hospital from. The hospitalry. Hospitals were actually places where people could rest, pilgrims could rest. They were all for pilgrims. Facilities for pilgrims were there. Same thing with the Camino. So, to the question, but how does one know that time when the spiritual current will flow? It's not difficult. A person who practices meditation can very easily recognize it. In other words, pilgrimage is a pilgrimage of body, of mind, and of spirit. Swami Shivananda Mahapurush Maharaj says, "My child, in common parlance is said that a rolling stone gathers no moss. Aimlessly wandering by itself cannot be beneficial in the spiritual realm, nor can it help one towards God realization. But with the aim of getting rid of the ego, which is the key stumbling block, and fostering a spirit of full reliance on God, because that's the attitude of the pilgrimage. The attitude of the pilgrim, particularly in the days where pilgrimages were not that easy, there is a kind of letting go, a reliance, a full faith on God. One may periodically subsist on food gathered from many places or live a life of total seclusion without any possession or wander about a little. Undoubtedly, such courses can be helpful, but there is no necessity for pursuing them year after year, I may add, with some sense of expectation. But when you meditate, he says, try to think of what you saw in the holy places. And that's the other benefit of pilgrimage. A pilgrimage is a place where you can take a mental snap, a mental photograph, stored in your memory, and bring it back for a game of guiding thought, which we call meditation. We can recall the atmosphere of the holy place, the scene, the visual scene that we have, the feeling that we have. This is a wonderful, wonderful benefit of pilgrimage. And he says this is certainly the object of going on pilgrimages. If one undertakes them like a tourist, for example, he gains nothing from them. The holy places are indeed his glories. While thinking of him, one should also think of the manifestations of his power. In holy places, there is a special manifestation of him. He is not seated in our chapel only. He is the Lord of the universe. He is all-pervasive. He exists everywhere. But he is specially manifest in holy places and his saints and devotees. Whenever I go to a body of water, I try to put at least my feet in. Why is that? Because all this water in some way or other was connected with the holy Ganga. And water itself is a symbol of divine grace and life itself flowing. Many have expressed the opinion that pilgrimages at an inauspicious time do not bring good fruit. And he says also you will come across many, many renunciant sadhus, wandering monks, who have made pilgrimage on foot to the 4 holy places and who have done similar things. But how many of them, he says, are genuine? How many are genuine sadhus with devotion and discrimination? Of course, it's not that there are no such sadhus, but their number, he says, is actually very limited. And so he goes on like that. Another disciple, Swami Purnananda, would say, worship and serve the Lord with your whole heart. Repeat his name. Be absorbed in meditation. And pilgrimage, of course, is an opportunity to do that. If you cannot surrender your mind to God, What's the use of visiting places of pilgrimage? Call on Him with your whole mind, and you'll find Him no matter where you may be. Because every place, in a sense, is a pilgrimage. And so it goes on like that. Swami Purnananda, Latu Maharaj, he said, when I was young and an accompanying person who went with Holy Mother, he says, when I was young, I visited many holy places and associated with many sadhus. I went on foot to these 4 important holy places, and there were no railways then. You can imagine what difficulty we had to undergo. But even though I practiced such austerities, I gained very little. Ignorance and sorrow were as deep as ever. And finally I sat down here in the garden and I made a resolution. Which garden? Dakshin as well. May God be realized, or may this body die. Now you see, I've gotten a little abiding bliss. Very beautiful. Vijnananda, Swami Vijnananda said, gods and sages do come to bathe at Triveni. He was particularly fond of the place in Allahabad. If they do not come, the place can no longer be considered as a holy place of pilgrimage. These are some of the things mentioned. Now, I mentioned that I myself have been on some pilgrimages, some of them successful, as it were, and some of them not. But there was, we can maybe finalize the subject a little bit by quoting Rumi, that great Sufi mystic. He says, I searched for God and found only myself. And I searched for myself and I only found God. There are so many pilgrimage places that are valuable in my own lifetime. I could mention a few. A certain abbey that was near the place where I grew up. I went to a place in Yugoslavia, as it was then, called Medjugorje, where I found mixed reactions, and I found the benefit, spiritual upliftment that I got was not really because of the place. The place gave an impetus toward changing thought, toward a devotional attitude, surrounded by people of a devotional nature. But it's a controversial place. And then, of course, India itself, for me, is a mother. It is in itself, in totality, a place of pilgrimage. Those who are devotees of Ramakrishna will find ample opportunities for pilgrimage in Kolkata itself, around Belur Math itself, and other places. And the idea of doing a pilgrimage with other people has a bonus. It gives a certain spiritual energy to like-minded people, a certain empathy, mutual empathy with others, a kind of comradeship which is also beneficial, but is also beneficial to do it alone. Right nearby, Glendalough is the most wonderful place of pilgrimage that anybody can visit, associated with St. Kevin. And in this way, we see the great, great value of pilgrimages, holy places, taking mental photographs. In a sense, there's a phrase, going to your happy place. And with that, we can finish off about the benefits and certainly the value of pilgrimage and holy places. And if you can, of course, I know many of you are dispersed, then this pilgrimage also that occurs on Friday and Saturday might be an opportunity for such a holy endeavor. I know at least some people are coming, and anybody who wants to come, you can contact me and we can see if we can help to arrange a worthwhile and valuable pilgrimage for you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be on them.